All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. So in our first video from this chapter two, right, we started with the very foundational elements, understanding this first task of this strategy making, strategy executing process, as we're talking about, right? Basically, all this simple framework is just talking about what tasks do we need to engage in order to strategy and execute it appropriately so that it does the things we hope that it does, right? So we talked about this first task, these ideas about what's the importance of making sure that we have a strategic future look our future focused vision, making sure we understand our present focused mission, and understanding what core values really drive the behaviors and what's normative around in our organization so that we can accomplish the things we're trying to accomplish. And we understand that hopefully these are the building blocks of this entire strategy execution process. So these are really some of those elements that inform a really important step of this process, which we find in the second task of setting our strategic objectives. Now, since we really need to think about setting objectives as kind of our motivators, you might say, what we really want to make sure we're focused on is this idea. Since we want to set objectives to be our motivators, do you think that it's better to set lofty objectives or more conservative ones? This is something a lot of people disagree with, but if you're sitting here and you're kind of saying to yourself, I really think that lofty goals are the way to go, sit and think to yourself a little bit about why you think that. Why do you think that, um, you know, why do you think that we as managers need to set lofty goals? And what do you think that we need to do if we want to get our managers or other people to achieve those goals, right? And that is we got to reward them, right? So objective setting shouldn't just end with our top management, our top management's, establishment of firm-wide performance targets. It's not necessarily all we want to do with this idea of setting objectives. It's not just about, like set a lofty goal and then, like now we've hit or we've set high targets. We've told people about them. That's all that's good, right? They'll want to accomplish them, right? Well, may not be the case, right? So setting shouldn't just end with us setting those things, right? Objectives got to be broken down into performance targets for, let's say, each separate business, product line, functional department, individual work unit, all these kinds of things. So, I mean, essentially, this whole process actually entails making sure that we represent our managerial commitment to achieving these results and outcomes. So essentially, construct types of objectives that are going to be quantifiable, right? Things that we can actually come up with a metric that determines whether or not we've accomplished those objectives. And being specific about setting deadlines and those achievements. We talked about in an earlier video, right, about what is the most conducive way to goal set. Well, setting objectives is just another way of saying that we're setting goals for our companies. So we know from a psychological perspective that setting goals, our best way of obtaining those goals is by making sure that we can measure them and they are specific and have like deadlines for us to hit, right? Because having concrete, measurable, and also challenging objectives are really valuable to us. The reason that we stress the second task of this model so much is because setting quantifiable, obtainable, specific, deadline-driven goals helps us to really know that what we've got to focus our attention on, right? These are going to be kind of a measure of having us figure out whether we are staying on track and, doing what's necessary in order to get us the outcome that we've started off by defining. So hopefully this is going to motivate people to perform at higher levels. Like we were saying, again, these objectives are just a motivational tactic to get what we want. So the important thing, is is to understand that, there are a couple different kinds of objectives that we might set, and they're going to look a little different, right? We have financial objectives, right? Things that are going to focus on some element of financial performance, like maybe a goal we're setting is we want to increase annual revenues, right? Or we want to create a bigger margin. So by selling something for X amount of dollars, we want to make sure we keep a higher percentage of that amount that we're selling things for. Or maybe we're increasing our shareholder value, like it says. Okay, great. Those are all perfectly acceptable financial objectives that we might set, but we also have objectives that are strategic in nature, right? And our strategic ones don't just strictly focus on like financial performance. They are looking at strengthening the things that lead to financial performance, right? This might be our ability to attract and retain customers, compete effectively, all of these kinds of things. We can all see how, like having each of those as a strategic objective for us is likely going to cause us to act in different ways. It's going to lead to better financial performance for us. So the important thing for us to remember between these two things, they're not worlds apart or different. It's just that good strategic performance will always in turn foster better financial performance, right? And the reason for that is basically, influenced by this idea of strategic intent, right? Strategic intent is basically something that we specify in our organization that's going to express our dedication to this, what we say, like a relentless pursuit of the strategic objective, right? It is this commitment that basically all other objectives revolve around this intent. We create all of our objectives based off of this strategic intent. So firms with strategic intent that really clearly convey what the strategic intent of that firm really is, they're going to be definitely more formidable competitors than their rivals that have, modest or minimum strategic objectives or ambitions that have been stated within the organization. So, one of the things you're going to do with your simulation teams once we get into this BSG platform is basically it's really good for you to sit down with them. One thing that I think would be really good for you to do with your team is sit down and consider the merits of crafting an objective with a strategic intent. Say what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then make sure that the rest of your strategic decisions revolve around that idea, right? This will include maybe short-term and long-term objectives. What do we want to accomplish in this operating cycle? What do we want to accomplish by the end of it, right? I gave you some long-term objectives in that video that's explaining about the business strategy game. So, if your team hasn't defined what your intents are by the time that you start the simulation, you might just find, like we were saying, a lot of paths look attractive to you. But I would definitely suggest that if you want to be successful at that, try talking, either in person by Zoom or like via message, to try to set at least one strategic objective or the strategic intent of your team so that you can have something as like a guide for a lot of your decision making as you move forward in the semester, and understanding that setting these objectives is the foundation of all the decision making you'll do. It is your guiding light moving forward to crafting an effective strategy and understanding how you can align the execution of that strategy with what you're hoping to accomplish.